The Galactic Council chamber fell silent when Commander Marcus Webb drew 3 lines on the holographic display. 2 vertical, 1 horizontal, then 2 more crossing them. This, he said to the 100 alien representatives watching, is how we'll defeat the Kresh Armada. Ambassador Torin of the Vexian Empire leaned forward, his 4 eyes narrowing. Human, we gave you 6 cycles to prepare a battle plan. We mobilized 17 fleet groups. We shared our most classified tactical databases. His translator couldn't quite hide the anger in his voice. And you show us a children's game? Marcus smiled. That same smile that had made the council nervous during first contact 3 months ago. Want to play around? Before we dive deeper, if stories like this excite your imagination, then hit that subscribe button to support more epic tales like this. Now the story unfolds. It started 8 weeks earlier, when humanity submitted its application to join the Galactic Council. Not because we wanted to, because we had to. The Kresh were coming. Nobody knew where they came from. They just appeared at the edge of the galaxy 15 years ago and started expanding. World after world fell. The Kresh didn't negotiate, didn't communicate. They just showed up, wiped out everything, and moved on. Now they were 3 months from Sol. Captain James Rourke stood in the council antechamber, tugging at his dress uniform. He hated formal occasions. Give him a cockpit any day. Stop fidgeting, Marcus whispered. We need these people. We need their fleets, James corrected. We don't need their bureaucracy. The doors opened. A Vexian aide gestured them inside. The council chamber was massive. 100 of species, each evolved under different stars, all trying to hold back the Kresh tide. At the center sat the War Council. 7 species. The ones who'd survived the longest. Torin spoke first. Humanity. Your application for membership is problematic. Marcus kept his expression neutral. How so? You've had faster-than-light travel for less than a century. Most species develop FTL, then spend 5,000 years building up before they encounter us. Torin pulled up a hologram. You had FTL for 83 years. In that time, you've colonized 4 systems, built a fleet of, what would you call them? Warships? We'd classify them as armed shuttles. A ripple of what might have been laughter went through the chamber. You have no experience with galactic-scale warfare, Torin continued. Your largest battle involved, what, 600 ships? 743. James said quietly. The Mars Rebellion. We fought battles with 1 million vessels. Torin waved a hand. Your children. Talented children, perhaps. But the Kresh are coming for Earth, and we cannot justify diverting resources to defend a world that brings nothing to our war effort. Marcus stepped forward. What would we need to bring? Excuse me. What would justify your help? Technology. We don't have anything you don't. Resources? We're one system. Numbers. Marcus shook his head. We know we're small. So what do we have that would make you care? Torin was quiet for a long moment. Then, a battle plan. What? The Kresh have never been defeated. Slowed, yes. Held back, temporarily. But never beaten in a direct confrontation. They adapt too fast. They learn our patterns. Torin's voice dropped. 17 species have gone extinct trying to stop them. We're running out of time and options. So here's our offer. You have 6 cycles to analyze everything we know about the Kresh. All our data. Every battle, every tactic we've tried. If you can show us something new, something we haven't thought of, we'll defend Earth. If not. He let the sentence hang. And if we succeed? Marcus asked. Then humanity gets a full council seat. A voice in how this war is fought. And all the protection that comes with it. James grabbed Marcus's arm. Can we have a moment? Outside the chamber, James rounded on him. This is insane. We're not tactical geniuses. We're barely holding our own fleet together. We're also about to die, Marcus said flatly. Earth has 6 months of conventional defense. Maybe 8 if we're lucky. The Kresh will cut through us like we're not even there. So we trade one impossible task for another? No. We buy time and maybe, just maybe, find something they missed. Marcus looked back at the chamber doors. Everyone in there has been fighting this war for decades. They're thinking in the same patterns. Using the same strategies. And we're going to do better? We're going to think different. Marcus straightened his uniform. That's all we've got. The data was overwhelming. Marcus and James sat in the quarters the council had provided, surrounded by holographic displays. 15 years of battles. Thousands of engagements. Every tactic, every strategy, every desperate gambit the galaxy had tried against the Kresh. All failures. They're not invincible, James said, 3 days into their review. Look. Here. The Battle of Krell Prime. The Kresh took 40% casualties. And then they adapted. Marcus pulled up the next engagement. Next battle, same tactic, 3% casualties. They learn too fast. So we need something completely new. Something they've never seen. Marcus rubbed his eyes. They'd been at this for 70 hours straight. Every species in the council has been trying completely new for 15 years. We're not going to out-invent them. Then what? Marcus didn't answer. He was staring at one of the tactical displays. The Battle of Vex Prime, where the Kresh had faced the entire Vexian home fleet. The Vexians had used a brilliant pincer movement, caught the Kresh between 2 massive formations. The Kresh had split their force perfectly. Met both threats. Adapted mid-battle. They react, Marcus said slowly. What? Look at this. Every battle. The Kresh don't have a plan. They react. Perfectly, efficiently, but they react. Marcus started pulling up more battles. Here. The Thren Armada tried a feint. Kresh didn't fall for it, but they still repositioned to counter it. Here. The Borlak tried an oblique approach. Kresh matched it. So they're good at reacting. How does that help us? Marcus was pacing now. Chess. What? You ever play chess against a computer? James blinked. Sure. Lost every time. Right. Because the computer can calculate millions of moves ahead. It's reactive thinking at its finest. But you know what computers are bad at? Marcus spun around. When you do something stupid. I'm not following. Computers expect optimal play. They've calculated every reasonable move and have a counter. But if you do something random, something that doesn't make tactical sense, it throws them off. Just for a second. They have to recalculate. The Kresh aren't computers. No. They're better. They're adaptive intelligence. Probably some kind of hive mind or distributed processing. But it's the same principle. They've seen every conventional tactic. They expect optimal play. Marcus pulled up a star chart. What if we do something that makes no tactical sense? Like suicide. Like chaos. They spent the next week building the model. Not a battle plan. A pattern breaker. James plotted fleet positions while Marcus worked on the mathematics. How do you quantify randomness? How do you weaponize unpredictability? This is insane, James said for the 100th time. We're essentially planning to not have a plan. No. We're planning to have a plan that looks like we don't have a plan. Marcus highlighted a section of the simulation. Look. Here. If we position our forces in this pattern, that pattern leaves our flanks completely exposed. Exactly. The Kresh will see it, calculate the optimal counter, move to exploit it. And then we die. And then we move here. Marcus showed the next phase. Not to counter their counter. To a completely different position. One that makes no sense based on where we started. James stared at the simulation. They'll adapt. Of course they will. But it'll take time. Maybe seconds. Maybe minutes. But time. Marcus ran the simulation. And while they're adapting to our second position, we move to a third. Then a fourth. We never give them a stable pattern to lock onto. Constant chaos. Directed chaos. There's a difference. James shook his head slowly. Even if this works, the casualties will be massive. We'd be deliberately putting our ships in vulnerable positions. We're already dead if we fight them conventionally. This gives us a chance. Marcus closed the simulation. A small chance. But a chance. The Council is going to hate this. Probably. Marcus smiled. That's how I'll know we're onto something. 3 days before the deadline, Marcus had a thought that kept him awake. He called James to the quarters at 0300 hours. This better be good, James muttered, arriving in sleep clothes. Marcus had filled the room with holograms. Not battle sims. Games. Chess. Go. Poker. And dozens of others. What am I looking at? James asked. Pattern recognition. Marcus pointed at the chessboard. Chess is pure strategy. Every piece has rules. Every move has a counter. It's calculable. Okay. Go is about territory. You're not trying to kill pieces. You're trying to control space. Different thinking. I'm still waiting for the point. Marcus pulled up a new display. Poker is about imperfect information and bluffing. You don't know what your opponent has. You're playing the player, not the cards. And the Kresh are winning because they're playing chess. Pure tactical calculation. They see the board, calculate optimal moves, execute perfectly. Marcus highlighted his simulation. We're trying to play Go against them. Territory control, shifting patterns. But you know what? They'll adapt to that too. Given enough time, they'll learn any game we play. So we're still dead. Unless. Marcus pulled up a simple grid. 3 by 3. We play a game so simple, they can't see the depth. James looked at the grid. Tic-Tac-Toe. You want to beat the greatest threat the galaxy has ever seen with Tic-Tac-Toe. Hear me out. Tic-Tac-Toe seems simple, right? Connect 3 in a row. Basic. Even kids know that if both players play perfectly, it's always a draw. Right. But that's only if both players understand what game they're playing. Marcus started marking the grid. What if you're playing tic-tac-toe, but your opponent thinks you're playing chess? That doesn't make sense. Exactly. That's the point. Marcus was animated now. The Kresh look at a battlefield and see chess. Complex pieces, complicated rules, optimal moves. They've mastered that game. But what if the actual game is simpler? What if winning isn't about complex tactics, but about understanding which squares matter? James stared at the grid. You've been up too long. No, listen. In tic-tac-toe, The center square is key. Control it and you have 4 ways to win. Corners give you 3. Edges, only 2. It's basic strategy. But if you don't realize you're playing tic-tac-toe, you might treat all squares as equal. And the Kresh. The Kresh have been playing galactic chess for 15 years. Complicated formations, elaborate tactics. What if the actual war is simpler? What if there are key positions, key moments, that matter more than anything else? And because everyone's been playing chess, nobody's noticed. James sat down slowly. Show me. Marcus pulled up the Kresh invasion pattern. 15 years of expansion, plotted in 3 dimensions. Look at this. Everyone analyzes their tactics, their ship compositions, their battle strategies. But look at the pattern of worlds they've taken. James studied it. No pattern. They just take everything in their path. No. Look closer. Here. And here. And here. Marcus highlighted 3 systems. These worlds had nothing special. Low population, minimal resources. But the Kresh took them with their main fleets. Full force. Meanwhile, these systems. He highlighted others. Rich worlds, heavily defended. The Kresh sent smaller forces. Doesn't make sense. Not if you're playing chess. But if you're playing tic-tac-toe. Marcus overlaid a grid on the galactic map. These 3 worlds. They form a line. A strategic line through galactic space. Control these points, and you control movement through 5 sectors. James leaned in. The Kresh are playing territory control? They're playing connection. They're not trying to kill us all. They're trying to connect 3 in a row across the galaxy. Create an unbreakable line we can't get around. That's crazy. Is it? Look at their retreat patterns. They never retreat randomly. They always fall back to positions that maintain their connectivity. Marcus pulled up battle after battle. Everyone's been trying to destroy their fleets. But fleets don't matter to them. Position matters. Connection matters. So, if we threaten their line, they have to respond. Not with optimal tactics. With positioning. They have to maintain the pattern. Marcus highlighted several systems. These are the key squares. The center and corners of their game. We don't need to defeat their entire armada. We need to take 1 square they can't afford to lose. James ran the calculations. This system, Junction 7, it's the center square of their formation. And if we take it, they lose 4 potential lines. They'd have to completely restructure their invasion pattern. James looked up. But we can't take it. There's a Kresh world ship there. Probably 1 million combat drones. We can't take it in a straight fight, Marcus agreed. But if we're not playing chess? If we make moves that don't make sense until the endgame? James started to smile. We've been thinking about this wrong. Everyone has. Because the Kresh are so good at tactics, everyone assumed this was a tactical war. But it's not. Marcus closed the displays. It's tic-tac-toe. And we just figured out what game we're playing. The presentation to the War Council was in 6 hours. Marcus and James had refined the plan. Not a battle strategy. A game strategy. It was audacious, probably insane, and absolutely nothing like what the council expected. They're going to think we're idiots, James said, reviewing their display. Good. If they understood it immediately, the Kresh would too. You really think this will work? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I think we're the first ones to realize what game we're actually playing. That gives us 1 move before the Kresh adapt. One chance to take the center square. And after that, they know we know. The game changes. But maybe by then, the rest of the galaxy will see it too. Marcus checked his uniform. Ready? No. But let's do it anyway. The council chamber was packed. Word had spread that the humans were presenting their battle plan. Probably comedy value. The idea that a species barely a century into spaceflight could show the council something new was laughable. Marcus walked to the central display. James stayed back, running the tactical board. Honored Council, Marcus began. Thank you for this opportunity. We've spent 6 cycles analyzing the Kresh. Every battle. Every tactic. And we found something. Torin leaned forward. Something we missed in 15 years? With respect, Ambassador, you didn't miss it. You just weren't looking at it. Marcus activated the display. The grid appeared. 9 squares. Simple. Basic. The chamber went silent. This is your battle plan. Torin's voice was dangerously quiet. A child's game. This, Marcus said calmly, is how the Kresh think, how they move, how they win. He had their attention now, even if it was hostile attention. Every species in this chamber has been playing chess against the Kresh. Complex tactics, elaborate strategies, brilliant maneuvers. And the Kresh have beaten every one of you. Why? Because they're more advanced, someone called out. No. Because they're not playing chess. Marcus overlaid the grid on a galactic map. They're playing tic-tac-toe. Connection. Position. Control of key squares. He walked them through it. The pattern of invasions. The retreat strategies. The way the Kresh always maintained connectivity between key systems. Not for tactical reasons. For strategic positioning. You've all been fighting battles, Marcus said. The Kresh are playing for position. They're not trying to win fights. They're trying to complete their pattern. Torin stood. This is absurd. You're telling me the most dangerous force in the galaxy is playing a game my children master at age 4. Yes. Marcus didn't back down. And they're winning because nobody realized what game it was. You're trying to beat them at chess. But you can't win a game you're not playing. And you can. The skepticism was thick. We can take their center square. James activated the tactical display. Junction 7. It's the key to their entire formation. They've fortified it, yes. But not against the attack pattern we're proposing. Which is? Marcus took a breath. This was it. Chaos. He laid it out. The random movements. The irrational positioning. The deliberately vulnerable formations that made no tactical sense. You've all been playing optimal strategy. The Kresh expect optimal play. They counter it perfectly. But they've never faced someone who deliberately plays wrong. Because playing wrong gets you killed, Torin said flatly. In chess, yes. But we're not playing chess. We're playing tic-tac-toe. And in tic-tac-toe, there's only 9 squares that matter. Everything else is distraction. Marcus highlighted the key systems. We sacrifice the edges. We make threatening moves toward their corners. And while they're calculating optimal counters to threats that don't matter. We take the center square, James finished. The chamber erupted. Arguments. Accusations. Disbelief. One voice cut through. Commander Breck of the Thren Armada. This is either genius or suicide. Both, probably, Marcus admitted. But conventional tactics will definitely get us killed. This might work. Might. We ran 10,000 simulations. In the ones where we play by their rules, Chess against their chess, we lose every time. In the ones where we break the pattern, force them to adapt to something random, we win 40% of engagements. 40% is not encouraging. 40% is infinitely better than 0%. Marcus looked around the chamber. Every species here has lost to the creche using optimal tactics. We're proposing suboptimal tactics for a different game. It's your choice whether that's brave or stupid. But it's the only new option you've seen in 15 years. Torin was quiet for a long time. Then, you're asking us to commit 17 fleet groups to a strategy based on children's game theory. No, Marcus corrected. I'm asking you to realize that the war you think you're fighting isn't the war that's actually happening. The creche figured out a simpler game. One you're overcomplicating. We're just pointing out which board you're actually playing on. The vote was close. 11-9 in favor. Barely. 17 fleet groups would deploy to Junction 7, under human tactical command, which made most of the council physically ill. But the math was undeniable. Every conventional strategy had failed. This was different, at least. Preparation took 3 weeks. Training pilots to fly in chaotic patterns. Teaching fleet commanders to make irrational decisions. It went against every instinct of professional warriors. This feels wrong, Admiral Kren of the Borlak fleet said during a simulation. Every formation you're proposing is vulnerable. That's the point, James explained. The creche will see the vulnerability and move to exploit it. That's when we shift. To another vulnerable position. To a position that threatens something else. We're not trying to protect our forces. We're trying to control where their forces go. And when they adapt, they will adapt. Probably in 30 to 40 minutes. By then, we need to have taken Junction 7. James pulled up the critical timeline. Everything depends on speed. We need to be inside their adaptive window. Kren studied the plan. You're betting the war on a 30-minute window. We're betting Earth on it, James corrected. You're betting resources. There's a difference. The battle began on a Tuesday. Earth time. Not that time zones meant anything in space. Marcus stood on the bridge of the human flagship, defiant. 16 other fleet commanders on holographic displays around him. Over 1 million ships, spread across the approach to Junction 7. The creche were already there. Their world ship dominated the system, surrounded by defensive formations that would make any sane tactician weep. All fleets report ready, James said from Tactical. Marcus took one last look at the tic-tac-toe grid overlaid on his display. Center square. That's all that mattered. Execute Chaos Protocol 1, he ordered. The fleet moved. Not in formation. In what looked like random dispersion. Ships breaking away from their groups, racing toward positions that made no strategic sense. The Vexian Third Fleet charged straight at the creche center, then veered off at the last second. The Borlak Armada split into 100 fragments, each heading in different directions. On the creche world ship, something that might have been confusion rippled through their formation. They adapted. Of course they did. In less than 2 minutes, they'd calculated counters to every human ship position. Defensive formations shifted. Attack drones deployed. Phase 2, Marcus called. The fleet moved again. Not to counter the creche counters. To completely new positions. Positions that, if the creche hadn't just repositioned their defenses, would be suicide. But because they had repositioned, these new positions created different threats. The creche adapted again. Faster this time. 90 seconds. Phase 3. Again the fleet moved. Again the creche countered. The adaptation time was dropping. 70 seconds. 60. They were learning the chaos pattern. We're running out of time, James said. They're starting to predict our unpredictability. I know. Get ready. Marcus watched his board. The Kresh were focused on the fleet, on the chaotic movements, on the tactical problem. They weren't watching the center square. All fleets, Marcus said quietly. Execute endgame. Every ship, in every fragment of the chaotic formation, turned and burned at maximum acceleration. Not toward the Kresh defenses. Toward Junction 7 itself. A single, concentrated thrust at the center square. For 5 seconds, the Kresh didn't react. They were still calculating counters to patterns that no longer existed. Still adapting to chaos. 5 seconds was enough. The human vanguard, 300 ships that had spent the last 20 minutes looking vulnerable and scattered, hit Junction 7's orbital defenses. They didn't try to destroy them. They just made holes. Through those holes came the hammer. Vexian fleet groups. Thren battle cruisers. Borlak dreadnoughts. Every major force in the attack, concentrated on one point. The Kresh world ship shuddered. They're adapting, James called. Defensive formations shifting. Too late. Marcus watched the plot. Vexian 3rd, you're through the perimeter. Execute bombardment pattern. With pleasure, Commander Torin's voice came back, and for the first time Marcus heard what might have been respect. The world ship's shields failed. Not everywhere. Just in the key locations. The assault teams went in. It wasn't easy. The Kresh fought for every corridor. But they were fighting tactically. Room by room. Optimal defense. They still didn't understand the game had changed. 28 minutes after the battle began, human marines reached the world ship's core. Whatever passed for a Kresh command center. They didn't need to destroy it. They just needed to take it. Control the center square. The galaxy held its breath. For 6 hours after Junction 7 fell, nothing happened. The Kresh forces throughout their territory simply stopped. No new invasions. No movement. Then, slowly, they began to withdraw. Not retreat. Withdraw. Falling back to defensive positions. Contracting their territory. In the council chamber, Torin stared at the galactic map. They're reforming. They're playing a different game now, Marcus said. They know we know. So they're changing their pattern. But they're not attacking. No. They're adapting. Marcus highlighted several systems. Look. They're no longer trying to form lines. They're clustering. Defensive position. So we won. We won this round. We took their center square and broke their pattern. But they're not beaten. They're adapting. Marcus zoomed out. The game's not over. It's just different now. Torin turned to face him. We owe you an apology. You owe us a council seat, Marcus corrected with a smile. The apology can wait. You really saw all of this in a children's game? I saw it because of a children's game. Simple patterns are hardest to see when you're looking for complexity. Marcus pulled up the tic-tac-toe grid one more time. You know what's funny? Every human child learns this game. We all know that if both players play perfectly, it ends in a draw. But we also learn something else. What's that? That sometimes winning isn't about playing perfectly. It's about understanding what game you're actually playing. Marcus closed the display. The Kresh were playing a perfect game. But they were so focused on perfection, they forgot that sometimes the simplest strategy is the best one. Torin was quiet for a moment. Then, what happens now? Now, we teach the rest of the galaxy to play tic-tac-toe. Marcus grinned. And we hope the Kresh take a long time to learn chess. 3 months later, Marcus stood in his new office. Human ambassador to the Galactic Council. Title felt weird. He preferred commander. James knocked and entered without waiting. You need to see this. He pulled up a transmission. From the outer rim, a crash vessel had been captured intact. First time in 15 years. The analysis team had been studying their computer systems. And Marcus prompted. You were right. Partially. James looked shaken. They're not playing tic-tac-toe. They're playing something else. Something we don't have a name for. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Show me. The display lit up. Not a 3x3 grid. A 4-dimensional matrix. Hundreds of connection points. Thousands of possible patterns. The Crash weren't playing a simple game. They were playing something incomprehensibly complex. But they'd been projecting it into 3-dimensional space. And in that projection, it looked like tic-tac-toe. Oh God, Marcus breathed. We didn't outsmart them. We showed them we could see one dimension of their game. Is that bad? I don't know. Marcus studied the matrix. But they withdrew because they realized we could perceive a pattern they thought was invisible. That means we're either more dangerous than they thought. Or they're reevaluating what game they need to play to beat us. Marcus closed the display. Get Torin, and Breck, and anyone else on the War Council who can think strategically. We need to figure out what game we're actually playing. You said we won. We won a battle. We took a center square in a game we barely understood. Marcus looked at the empty grid he'd drawn on his wall. 3x3. So simple. So human. But the war. The real war? I think we just got invited to play on a much bigger board. James left. Marcus stood alone, staring at the grid. He picked up a marker, drew a 4th line, then a 5th. The grid expanded. 4x4. More complicated. More connections. He could see the patterns now. How tic-tac-toe was just the beginning. How you could expand it. Layer it. Turn a simple game into something profound. His door opened again. Torin. What is it? The ambassador asked. Marcus didn't turn around. Do you know what humans call it when you expand tic-tac-toe to a larger grid? No. We don't have a name. Because at some point, the game becomes too complex to play casually. Too many patterns. Too many connections. Marcus finally turned. The Crash weren't playing our game. We were playing a simplified version of theirs. And we still won. Did we? Marcus gestured at his expanded grid. Or did we just prove we could see enough of their game to be worth playing against seriously? Torin stared at the wall. You think they were holding back? I think they were playing against opponents who couldn't even see the board. Now they know we can. At least partially. Marcus picked up his marker again. The question is, what do we do with that information? Learn their game. Maybe. Marcus drew another line. Or maybe we teach them ours. Show them that simple patterns have power they've forgotten. That sometimes the best strategy isn't the most complex one. You want to fight cosmic intelligence with children's games? Marcus smiled. That same smile that had made the council nervous months ago. I want to fight them with human thinking. Adaptability. Creativity. The ability to see patterns in chaos and chaos in patterns. He drew a final line. The grid was now 6x6. Hundreds of possible connections. You know what the beautiful thing about tic-tac-toe is? Marcus said. No matter how big you make the grid, the principle is the same. Connect 3 in a row. Simple goal. Infinite complexity in execution. And you think that applies to the war? I think every game, no matter how complex, has a win condition. The Kresh have been playing for 15 years, making it more complicated every battle. But somewhere in all that complexity is a simple pattern. 3 in a row. Marcus capped his marker. We just need to figure out which 3. The war wasn't over. Everyone knew that. The Kresh had withdrawn, but they hadn't surrendered. They were adapting, learning, preparing for the next phase. But for the first time in 15 years, the galaxy had hope. Because humanity had shown them something impossible. That you could face an overwhelming enemy, understand nothing about them, have none of their advantages, and still find a way to win. Not through superior firepower. Not through better technology. But through pattern recognition. Through seeing the game underneath the game. Through thinking differently. In schools across the Council worlds, children started learning tic-tac-toe. Not as a game. As a lesson. That simple patterns can reveal complex truths. That sometimes the best strategy is the most basic one. That you don't need to outthink your enemy if you can out-pattern them. And on Earth, Marcus Webb stood in front of a classroom of military cadets. Future officers. Future defenders of humanity. Today, he said, I'm going to teach you the most important tactical lesson you'll ever learn. He drew 2 lines. Then 2 more. 3 by 3. This is a battlefield. The cadets looked confused. You're probably expecting advanced tactical theory. Multidimensional strategy. Quantum warfare doctrine. Marcus smiled. And you'll learn all of that. But first, you're going to master this. He marked an X in the center square. Who wants to go first? A cadet raised her hand. Hesitant. Sir, isn't this too simple? The Kresh thought so too, Marcus said. Right up until we took Junction 7 out from under them. He tossed her the marker. Your move. From the personal log of Commander Marcus Webb, 1 year after Junction 7. We're still fighting. The Kresh haven't given up. But the game has changed. Every species in the Council now has tactical teams studying pattern recognition. Not complex patterns. Simple ones. The kind you can miss because you're looking too hard. We've had 3 more major engagements. 1-2, lost 1 badly. The loss taught us that the Kresh are learning our patterns now. Fair enough. That's how the game works. But here's what's interesting. Other species are starting to see it. The Vexians developed a new strategy they call controlled chaos. The Thren figured out how to project false patterns that look complex but are really just noise. The Borlak, God bless them, started using prime numbers in their fleet formations. Don't ask me why. Something about patterns that can't be easily predicted. Everyone's thinking different now. Is it enough? I don't know. The Kresh are still out there, still adapting. But we're adapting too. And we're doing it faster because we're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to be unpredictable. James asked me the other day if I really believed Tic-Tac-Toe would save the galaxy. I told him no. Tic-Tac-Toe is just a teaching tool. What saves us is the thinking behind it. The understanding that complexity isn't always strength. That patterns exist at every level. That sometimes the side that wins isn't the strongest or the smartest, but the one that understands what game is actually being played. Earth is safe. For now. The Kresh invasion fleet that was heading our way turned back after Junction 7. They're consolidating. Planning. We bought time. What we do with that time will determine everything. Tonight I'm teaching another class. More cadets. More future tacticians. I'll draw the grid. They'll look confused. Then I'll tell them the story of how humanity joined the Galactic Council by showing the greatest military minds in the galaxy a game their children play. Some will get it immediately. Others will take time. But they'll all learn the same lesson. When you're facing impossible odds, don't try to beat your enemy at their game. Figure out what game you're actually playing. Then play it better than anyone thought possible. That's the human advantage. Not strength. Not technology. Not even courage. Adaptability. The ability to look at a four-dimensional matrix of incomprehensible complexity and say, you know what? This looks like tic-tac-toe to me. And then take the center square. Marcus closed his log and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kresh were planning their next move. Somewhere else, Council fleets were training in new tactics. And everywhere, across 1,000 worlds, people were learning to see patterns they'd never noticed before. The war would go on. Maybe for years. Maybe for decades. But humanity had proven something crucial. That newcomers could see things veterans had missed. That fresh eyes could spot patterns hidden in plain sight. That sometimes the newest player at the table was the one who changed the game. He thought about that first presentation. The shocked faces when he'd drawn those 9 squares. The disbelief. The anger. Then the slow, grudging acceptance that maybe, just maybe, these crazy humans had noticed something important. Torin stopped by later that evening. They'd become friends over the past year. Strange how war did that. I've been studying tic-tac-toe, the Vexian said, settling into a chair. It's more complex than I thought. Most simple things are. I can see why you used it. The patterns. The connections. Torin pulled up a holographic grid. But I've been thinking. What if we're still not seeing the full picture? Marcus raised an eyebrow. How do you mean? You said the Kresh are playing a four-dimensional game. We caught them by reducing it to 2 dimensions. But what if? Torin expanded the grid. What if there are more dimensions we're not seeing? What if their game is even bigger than we thought? Then we keep simplifying until we find the pattern. Is that wise? Shouldn't we try to understand the full complexity? Marcus shook his head. That's what everyone's been trying for 15 years. Match their complexity with your own. It doesn't work. They're always more complex. So we stay simple. We stay adaptable. Simple is just one tool. But it's a powerful one because it's unexpected. Marcus drew on his tablet. Look at human history. Some of our greatest victories came from simplifying complex problems. Some of our worst defeats came from overcomplicating simple ones. The trick is knowing which approach fits which situation. Torin studied the drawing. You're saying tactical flexibility is more valuable than tactical sophistication? I'm saying sophistication without flexibility is just rigidity. And rigid things break. Marcus smiled. The Kresh are sophisticated. Incredibly so. But they're also rigid. They play their complex game the same way every time. We're less sophisticated, but we can play any game we need to. Including games we barely understand? Especially games we barely understand. That's when human creativity shines. Marcus pulled up the Junction 7 battle simulation. We didn't win that battle through superior understanding. We won because we were willing to try something that made no sense. Something that should have failed. Chaos. Directed chaos. There's always a method to human madness. You just have to look for it. Marcus zoomed in on a particular moment. See here. This looks random. But it's not. It's following a pattern. Just a pattern that makes no sense in conventional warfare. A tic-tac-toe pattern. Exactly. We were making moves toward key squares while everyone thought we were just being chaotic. The creche included. Torin was quiet for a moment. You've changed how we think about war. We've changed how you think about patterns. The war is still the war. No. It's different now. Because we're different. You gave us permission to think small. To look for simple answers. Every species in the council has been trying to outthink the creche. Out-sophisticate them. You showed us we were making it too hard. Marcus laughed. I showed you that sometimes the answer is simpler than the question. Doesn't mean it's easy. No. But it means it's possible. Torin stood. The Borlak want to mount an offensive. They found what they think is another key square in the creche formation. Let me guess. They want to use chaos tactics. They want to use what they're calling Webb's Gambit. Marcus groaned. Please tell me they didn't name it after me. They did. The Thren are calling their approach human-style flexibility. The Vexians have a new tactical doctrine called pattern breaking. Torin smiled. You're famous. Across the galaxy, tacticians are studying human warfare, trying to understand how you think. We think messy. That's our secret. No, you think different. That's your secret. And it's saving us. Torin headed for the door, then paused. Thank you, Marcus, for showing us the game we were playing. And for teaching us that sometimes the best strategy is the simplest one. After he left, Marcus sat alone with his thoughts. Famous. He didn't want to be famous. He wanted to be effective. But if being famous meant more people learned to see patterns, to think flexibly, to question whether they were playing the right game, then maybe it was worth it. He pulled up the latest intelligence reports. The creche were moving again. Repositioning. Their formations were different now. More fluid. Less predictable. They were learning. Good. That meant the game was still interesting. Marcus opened a new file. Started sketching tactical scenarios. Not battle plans. Pattern puzzles. Ways to make the creche think one game was being played while humans played another. His communicator buzzed. James. We've got movement in Sector 7. Looks like a creche probe. Single ship or formation. 3 ships. Moving in a triangular pattern. Marcus pulled up the sector map. Looked at the positioning. Saw the pattern immediately. They're not probing. They're signaling. What? Look at the formation. 3 points. It's a pattern. They're showing us they understand. Understand what? That we're playing tic-tac-toe. They're making 3 marks. Showing us they see the game. Marcus felt a chill. They're adapting faster than I thought. Is that bad? It's interesting. They went from not seeing the pattern to understanding it in less than a year. That's impressive. Marcus started running calculations. But it also means they're reactive. They're still responding to what we show them. So we show them something else? We show them 100 something elses. Keep them adapting. Never let them settle into a pattern. Marcus grinned. They want to play tic-tac-toe? Fine. But we'll play it on a board that changes size every move. That's not a real game. Exactly. Welcome to human warfare. The war continued. Battles won and lost. Territory gained and surrendered. The slow grinding conflict of galactic-scale warfare. But something had changed. The desperate defensive stance of the Council had shifted. They were pushing back now. Not everywhere. Not decisively, but pushing. And at the heart of every new strategy, every innovative tactic, every unexpected maneuver, was a simple question. What game are we playing? Not, how do we win this battle? Not, what's the optimal strategy? But, what game are we playing, and is it the game we should be playing? That question, more than any weapon or technology, became humanity's gift to the galaxy. 6 months after the Borlac offensive, Marcus received a transmission from an unexpected source. A Kresh ship, broadcasting on human frequencies. "This is Commander Marcus Webb," he responded, his heart racing. First direct communication with the Kresh in 15 years. The reply came in English. Synthesized, mechanical but understandable. "You play an interesting game, human." Marcus felt every person on the bridge staring at him. He kept his voice steady. "We play to win. You play to change the rules. This is novel. This is adaptation. You should understand. You're good at it." A pause. Long enough that Marcus wondered if the connection had dropped. Then, "We will adapt to your adaptations. We'll adapt to your adaptations to our adaptations." Another pause. "This is inefficient." Marcus almost laughed. "War usually is. There are other games." "Like what?" "Games where both players win." And the connection cut. The bridge erupted in speculation. What did it mean? Was it a trick? A genuine overture? A psychological tactic? Marcus silenced them with a gesture. He was thinking. The Kresh had made contact, acknowledged human tactics, suggested cooperation. It could be a trap. Probably was a trap. But what if it wasn't? "Get me Torin," Marcus said quietly. "And the War Council. All of them." "Sir, what are you thinking?" Marcus stared at the starfield. "I'm thinking that maybe we've been playing the wrong game this whole time. All of us. Humans, Council, Kresh, everyone. What game should we be playing?" "I don't know yet." Marcus turned to James. "But I think we're about to find out." The emergency council session lasted 6 hours. Arguments, accusations, fear, hope, confusion. "It's obviously a trap," Kren insisted. "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "But what if it's not? What if the Kresh just realized that endless war is a game nobody wins?" "They're winning," someone pointed out. "Are they? They've been fighting for 15 years. Expanding, yes. But to what end? What's their win condition?" Marcus pulled up the galactic map. "They're not colonizing worlds. They're not taking resources. They're just taking. What kind of game is that? Domination? Or desperation?" Marcus highlighted the Kresh expansion pattern. "Look at this. They're moving in one direction. Always one direction. Away from something." Torin leaned forward. "You think they're running?" "I think they're playing a game we haven't seen yet. And maybe they're losing it." Marcus closed the map. "What if we've been thinking about this wrong from the beginning? What if the Kresh aren't the enemy? What if they're players in a bigger game, just like us?" That's a huge assumption. So was Tic-Tac-Toe. And it worked. Marcus looked around the chamber. "I'm not saying we trust them. I'm saying we talk to them. Find out what game they think they're playing. Maybe we're on the same side and don't know it." The vote was closer than Junction 7. 13-11 in favor of contact. Marcus was authorized to negotiate. With one condition: if it was a trap, he'd take the fall alone. He accepted without hesitation. The meeting happened in neutral space. A single Kresh vessel. A single human ship. The Defiant, with Marcus at the helm. The Kresh representative materialized on the holographic communicator. Not humanoid. Not anything Marcus could easily describe. Shifting patterns of light and geometry. Beautiful and terrifying. I am Marcus Webb, representing humanity and the Galactic Council. I am. The translation system struggled. The equivalent of your strategic coordinator. I speak for the collective. You wanted to talk about games where both players win. Yes. Your species has demonstrated understanding of pattern dynamics. This is rare. Rare among the Council species? Rare among all species we have encountered. Most play single-layer games. Simple victory conditions. You play multi-layer games. You see patterns within patterns. Marcus felt a chill. How many species have you encountered? Thousands. Most are gone now. You destroyed them. No. The enemy destroyed them. We tried to save what we could. The bridge went silent. What enemy? Marcus asked carefully. The Kresh showed them. A simulation. Not a battle. Something worse. Reality itself breaking down. Patterns collapsing. Structure dissolving into chaos. We do not know what it is. Only what it does. It consumes ordered systems. Turns pattern into noise. It has been expanding for 3 million years. We have been fleeing for 2 million. Marcus stared at the simulation. The worlds you've taken. We evacuate what life we can. Preserve their patterns. The structures you see as warships are archives, genetic libraries, cultural databases. We save what can be saved before the enemy arrives. And the Council species you fought? They did not understand. They saw invasion. We saw rescue. Communication proved difficult. Your species is the first to recognize that the game was not what it appeared. Marcus felt the weight of it. 15 years of war. Thousands of battles. Trillions dead. All because of a misunderstanding. Why didn't you just tell us? We tried. Your communication operates on frequencies we cannot naturally produce. By the time we developed translation protocols, hostilities had begun. Each side assumed the worst of the other. And now you have shown us that humans understand pattern dynamics. You simplified our 4-dimensional movement pattern to 2-dimensional representation. Crude, but effective. This demonstrates cognitive flexibility we have not seen in 3 million years. So you want our help? We want to teach you our game. The real game. The one against the enemy. The Kresh's pattern shifted. And we want to learn your game. The adaptation. The chaos. The pattern breaking. We are very good at preserving order. You are very good at creating new order from chaos. Together we might survive what's coming. Yes. Marcus looked at James. At the bridge crew. They were terrified and hopeful in equal measure. I need to bring this to the Council. We understand. But please hurry. The enemy reaches Council space in 7 years. The revelation changed everything. The war ended overnight. Not with surrender. With understanding. The Kresh opened their archives. Thousands of preserved species. Genetic codes. Cultural knowledge. Everything they'd saved from 2 million years of retreat. The Council species, in turn, shared their tactical flexibility. Their adaptive strategies. Their human-taught pattern breaking. And humanity. Humanity taught everyone tic-tac-toe. Not the game. The lesson. That patterns exist at every level. That complexity can be simplified. That sometimes understanding which game you're playing matters more than playing it well. Marcus stood in the same council chamber where he'd first presented his grid. 1 year after first contact with the creche. The room was packed with species he'd never seen. Rescued populations. Preserved peoples. A gallery of galactic diversity that would have been lost if the creche hadn't saved them. "We have 7 years," he said, pulling up the simulation of the enemy. 7 years to figure out how to beat something that's been consuming the galaxy for 3 million years. Something that turns order into chaos. Pattern into noise. How do we fight that? Torin asked. Marcus smiled. Drew 2 lines on the display. Then 2 more. We start simple. We look for the pattern. Because everything has a pattern. Even chaos. He marked the center square. The enemy consumes ordered systems. Fine. We'll give it ordered systems to consume. False ones. Patterns that look real but collapse into more complex patterns when broken. Pattern traps. Pattern evolution. We make systems that grow more complex when attacked, not less. We turn the enemy's strength against it. Marcus expanded the grid. The creche are masters of preserving order. The council species are masters of creating order. Humans are masters of breaking order and rebuilding it. Together. He drew patterns that shifted and changed across the display. Order becoming chaos, becoming new order, becoming something else entirely. Together we play a game the enemy has never seen. A game where the rules change. Where chaos and order dance together. Where patterns evolve faster than they can be consumed. Can we win? Marcus looked at the assembled species. Thousands of years of knowledge. Millions of years of preserved wisdom. And 1 young species that had learned to see patterns in the chaos. I don't know, he admitted. But I know we can try. And if we're clever enough, adaptable enough, and brave enough. He marked the final position on his grid. We can take the center square. The chamber erupted in discussion. Plans. Strategies. Species that had been enemies a year ago, now working together. Sharing knowledge. Building something new. Marcus stepped back and watched them work. 7 years. It wasn't much time. But then again, humans had taken Junction 7 in 30 minutes. Sometimes that's all you needed. 1 window. 1 chance. 1 perfect move at exactly the right moment. He pulled out his tablet. Started sketching. Not battle plans. Pattern designs. Ways to make order that looked like chaos. Chaos that created new order. Systems that evolved faster than they could be consumed. It was tic-tac-toe on a galactic scale. And humanity was going to teach the entire galaxy how to play. They're calling it the Web Doctrine now. The strategic philosophy of adaptive pattern dynamics. Makes it sound more impressive than sometimes the simple answer is the right one. 7 years until the enemy arrives. We're ready. Maybe. Probably not. But we're trying. The creche taught us their game. 4-dimensional pattern preservation. Beautiful. Complex. Elegant. We taught them ours. Adaptive chaos theory. Messy. Unpredictable. Human. Together we're building something neither species could create alone. Patterns that evolve. Systems that adapt. Order that thrives on chaos. Will it work? Ask me in 7 years. But I'll tell you what I know for certain. When we drew that first tic-tac-toe grid in the council chamber, we changed the game. Not just for humans. For everyone. We showed the galaxy that sometimes the newest player sees what veterans have missed. That fresh eyes spot patterns hidden in plain sight. That innovation comes from unexpected places. Earth is safe. Humanity has a home in the Council. And we're about to face something that's destroyed thousands of civilizations. But we're not facing it alone. And we're not facing it unprepared. We're facing it with the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. The ability to look at an impossible problem and say, you know what? This looks like tic-tac-toe to me. Then take the center square and change the game forever. That's the human way. That's how we survive. That's how we win. Game on.